All right, folks, what's happening? I will give people a moment to trickle in before I start ranting like a wild man. We'll see who's in the house. I'm gonna update the Patreon post real quick so people get email that it's happening. All right, I see a few people trickling in. That's cool. We'll start in just a minute. If you have any questions, comments, discussion topics you want to kick things off with, throw them up in the chat. Who's all here? I see 5 people so far. Announce yourselves. I am calling in today from my folks' house in cold, wintry New Jersey, Monmouth County, right on the coast, right in the middle of the state, if you're curious. My wife and mother are out, which is great. They're, managing each other, so I don't have to. So I have a nice, undisturbed moment for a couple hours. And looking forward to talking about whatever you folks want to talk about. 8 people. All right. This is above average for us so far. The past few that I've done, these patron-only hangouts, attendance has not been stellar, I'll be honest with you. But that's cool. I don't really care. I always like talking. And what we did last time actually was people, bagels, excellent bagels in New Jersey, best bagels. Someone asked about that, if you're curious why I'm suddenly ranting about bagels. Yeah, the last time I did one of these, what we did was, it was only a few people, so I actually brought some people into the live stream. And it was pretty fun, honestly. So, like, right now there are 9 people watching. I don't know how many people I can actually bring in. I don't know how many people the system supports. But if any of you are, in a good mood, feeling frisky, and you want to chat, and, so other people can hear you and see you, I'm happy to try it again. It was pretty fun last time. I think last time only 1 or 2 people did it with me, but we could have a big clusterfuck where like 4 or 5 of you actually join the video conference with me and we all talk. If you want to do that, just throwing it out there. If you don't want to, and you just enjoy, whatever, doing work around the house while you listen to me blather on, that's perfectly fine too. No obligation. But I guess what I'll say is, if you're listening now and you would like to join a group conversation with me right now and actually come into the stream, just say so in the chat, and maybe we'll do that. Until then, feel free to ask me questions or give me topics or whatever. And if I don't hear anything, I will just update you on my life and give some hopefully interesting rants. Antoine says he'll join. Okay. Who else is in the house? Who else wants to join? Let me know. I'll just give some time for people to sign up to join the video conference. And if, let's say, if 3 or 4 people want to do it, then I'll do it. Jacob says he'd be interested in 30 minutes. He's still drinking his first coffee. Cool. So am I. However, I've been sipping on it for a couple hours now. All right, so let's see. Sign up if you want to. Just write a comment in the chat. Yesterday I dropped a blog post that was kind of a longer post I've been working on for the better part of the week. I really want to get back into kind of hardcore, high focus, long form data blogging, because honestly, that's kind of like the work that I do that I think is the most interesting and most valuable and kind of most unique. And it's kind of what got me traction very early on in my kind of internet career. So, you know what they say, you want to dance with the lady that brought you there. So I'm trying to get back to my roots and do a series of long form, really interesting and incisive, hopefully, and useful kind of data driven blog posts. And I just did one in this series that I'm planning. And I think it's pretty cool. It uses a technique called recursive partitioning, which gives you a decision tree, which is really, it's a fancy way of saying if you want to predict something about someone, the model can give you pretty much like what is the best sequence of questions you can ask them to get the best prediction possible in the shortest amount of time, essentially, is what this technique allows for. So I thought this would be really fun to apply this to, like, predicting whether or not someone is a woke scold. Because I think this is a real challenge, right? For people like us, probably, I'm assuming people listening to this are kind of like me. You probably have some number of kind of sketchy or edgelord opinions. And when you go to like a Christmas party with your family or any type of social, cocktail party, anything really, it's always a real problem, right? Like when you're talking with someone, maybe you think you're getting along well with them, you think they're kind of cool, smart, open-minded, but you're not really sure if you can, you're not sure how edgy you can go. You're not sure if you can tell them your more controversial opinions because there's a decent probability they're just going to blow up or they're going to look down on you or they're going to fight you or cause some sort of like scene and make the party kind of awkward and sad. Or, even if they don't say anything in that moment, maybe because they're cowardly, they might gossip about you. You just never really know nowadays what you can say to different types of people because there's so many different sensitivities out there and there's so many woke scolds floating around now. So I thought it'd be cool to build a statistical model that could actually give us a useful heuristic for like when we go to parties or any type of social environment and we encounter a random person, what is the best set of questions, like a small set of questions you can ask them that give you the best possible prediction about whether or not you can, speak honestly with them. And I built a little model and it works fairly well. It's not amazingly useful. Like the statistical discrimination is not super powerful, but it's better than nothing. And it's kind of interesting for many reasons. So anyway, I wrote that up and posted it on the Jay Murphy blog yesterday. That's like a more technical post. It gives you like all the code you need to do this type of analysis. And then this morning I wrote and posted a kind of more practical and kind of social political version of the same post for the Other Life blog. And I'm looking forward to getting into the groove of doing more, longer form, more sophisticated, high investment, data driven blog posts. Because I think, there's so much interesting stuff to be done on that front. All right, so that's that. I don't know if you have any questions about that. I'd be happy to talk more about it. Well, I guess I'll go into the results. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. I'll give you the quick and dirty. Basically, a lot of people have it in their minds that the woke scolds, the best predictors of the woke scolds are like, are they like a college educated woman, like, or something like that? But it's actually not the case. This is a good example of how kind of media availability, the examples in media really do kind of drive a lot of biased thinking. So still to this day, being educated or having any amount of college is one of the best predictors of someone supporting free speech and not really caring what you think, really not being a woke scold, in other words. And so it's tricky because it is the case that the kind of most explosive woke scolds do tend to be educated people, but they are a minority and so within the educated class. And so much so that if you do a statistical model, education is one of the best predictors of not being a woke scold. And this comes through in my decision tree model that I derived this week. And so it's a useful antidote. Social science, one of the best things about social science is it really often gives you results that are not the ones you're thinking based on, the hot topics of the day, based on the memes and the ideas that are popular in the media. Social science and data analysis is very consistently a kind of cold water on whatever is the hot meme at the moment. And it's sometimes kind of frustrating or disappointing because when you do data analysis, you're mentally hoping to get the result that flatters kind of the hot topic that you're trying to speak to. And yeah, the data is usually pretty stubborn. Social science is usually pretty sobering. It usually gives results that are less sexy and less, exciting, less consistent with what is the hot topic at the moment. But it's useful for that reason. Yeah, it's kind of like contrarianness or something like that. It's like it's so popular to have the kind of interesting, surprising take that, in a weird way, social science, because it's really good at giving the boring, sober take, it has a kind of contrarian appeal all of its own. Mosby Erickson says, I'm not aware of the woke skull meme. Can you define it? Oh, the woke scold. Woke scold, I'm saying. Woke scold is just a word for woke people who are like hysterical and get on your case about saying anything edgy. That's all I mean by woke scold. So there you have it. Man, there's 16 people hanging out. I'm almost confused, like, oh, you know what I think happened? I think this might have gone out to the public. Because there's usually more people. I'm sorry, this is more people than there usually are. Okay, well, if you're here from the public, congratulations. You've gained access to the exclusive patron-only live stream. Let me check if that's right. I don't know if that's right. Can someone tell me in the chat? Are you coming here from some sort of public avenue? That was this accidentally tweeted out or something? I have all these automations now, but they're probably sometimes they do things without me fully knowing it. Oh yeah, it was tweeted out. Oh shoot. Okay, well, I'm gonna delete that. Not that it's a big deal. I don't really care, but this is supposed to be an exclusive patron benefit, so I don't really care if people join. Oh yeah, it's in the subscription feed. Sorry, folks. I got a lot to figure out. My systems are too complex. I can't keep up on it all. Well, the video is unlisted, so I thought unlisted videos don't show up in notification feeds. Okay, well, whatever. Congratulations, you all get just this one time. You get free access to the exclusive patron-only stream, so it's all good. I mean, it's kind of cool because there's more people here. Usually, to be honest, I have about 100 patrons, so for the patron-only live streams, it's usually only about somewhere between like 3 and 10 people usually. So it's just a little bit more, So that's cool. All right. Well, now I feel a little pressure. Usually these are just very informal. So, okay, folks. So here's what we're doing. If you want to join the live stream, make a comment in the chat. And what I'm going to do in a few minutes is I'm going to invite like 5 or 6 of you to actually join the conversation. So people will see your face and hear your voice. All right. So it'll be a bit of a clusterfuck experiment. So yeah, if you're interested in actually joining me in the talk, then just say that you're interested in the comments. And maybe what I'll do is I'll figure it out. I'll either send you a link to join, or maybe I'll just post a link to join in the chat, and the first people to enter it are the ones that get to do it until it hits the limit. I don't even know what the limit is. Okay. Yeah, my bad. I see this went out on my Twitter, and I guess it also went out on YouTube. Whatever. So yeah, I just posted that blog post that I was talking about. I think it's pretty cool. Oh, here's some interesting news. At Jeffrey and Diana's wedding, you might know Jeffrey Miller, the psychologist, recently married Diana Fleischman, the psychologist. I'm friends with these people. I've been living with them in Albuquerque for past like 6 or 7 months, if you didn't know that. Anyway, they got married, and they had a lovely wedding in Cincinnati, which my wife and I attended. And oh, right. What I was going to share with you is that I met some cool people there. One person I met there was the editor of the web magazine Psychology Today. Actually, I think it's a print magazine too. And she was really cool. She was really nice. And she didn't know anything about my work or anything. She vaguely knew of me. She knew that I'm kind of like an academic defecting from academia, and that I'm, doing all this internet stuff, but she doesn't know what I think, or she doesn't really know my work or anything like that. But she was just cool and friendly. So we were just chatting, and she was basically telling me about Psychology Today and their revenue model. And I didn't know this, but they actually have a very interesting revenue model where they pretty much share the revenue with authors. So authors basically get a cut based on how many views they attract. And yeah, she basically more or less invited me to be an author for Psychology Today. I mean, I don't think it's like super competitive, or I don't really know. I think they have tons of authors, but at first I was kind of like, thank you, but I just kind of focusing on my own things. I kind of currently have the impression that like posting to my blog is actually more valuable for me right now than posting on third-party sites, even if those third-party sites bring a lot of traffic. Kind of building my own brand or whatever, I think is kind of the more valuable and important thing for me to do right now. So at the moment, I've just been focused on building my own system and building my own community. But after she told me about the revenue model, yeah, I mean, she said that like a small number of people who write for Psychology Today are like legit rich from doing it. I mean, these things are power laws, right? So it's like exponential. There's probably a very, very small minority of people who make mad money with this kind of revenue sharing model. And then most of the authors probably make peanuts. But it did kind of get my competitive instincts stimulated. And I was kind of like, I wonder what I could do. I wonder what my results would look like. So yeah, I emailed her this week. So I'm going to, she said yes, as far as I know. And so, yeah, I think I'm going to start having a semi-regular column for Psychology Today. What's also really cool about it, the other reason why I said yes to this idea, and I'm like, yeah, sure, let's give it a go, let's see how it works, is because they're totally cool with basically reproducing content. So she said straight up, I could just write for my blog and then just copy it from my blog to Psychology Today. So I'll probably experiment with like writing some stuff just for Psychology Today and then reposting some stuff from my blog. But yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like that would be the ideal. Would be I just write my own original stuff for my blog, and then I do it in a way that's planned and sequenced, and then that stuff becomes books and videos and all that kind of stuff. I have that kind of production apparatus, which I already am building and already have underway and working pretty smoothly. And then I can just pretty much copy and paste it from my blog to Psychology Today. And then hopefully I'm hoping that they have like their own traffic generating mechanism so that when I post to Psychology Today, it just gets sent out to a bunch of boomers who wouldn't otherwise see my stuff on my own channels. And like, I don't know, maybe I make some money from that. We'll see. I'll give you the report. I mean, with these things, you kind of have to always imagine that probably you're not going to make very much at all. But I'm curious, and it's worth a shot. I'm curious to see. So yeah, she also said like if I wrote columns for Psychology Today, I still own them, so I could do anything I want with them later. Like I could plan like a 20 column sequence, right? And plan it in a way that it would, when I'm done with it, it would be like chapters of a book or something like that. And then when I'm done, I get paid per article for Psychology Today. And then when I'm done, I could make it a book or something like that. I'm thinking, this is the way that I'm thinking now. Like, I think this is the way that all kind of internet intellectuals have to think now, is like for all of the work that you want to do, all of the ideas that you have to kind of be strategic and clever about how you're going to sequence them and how you're going to maximize the value that you extract from them, essentially. I guess some of you might find this a kind of dehumanizing or cold, brutal way to think about, the soft magic arts of intellectual work. But yeah, I just don't think that anymore. I just see it all as an absolutely cold analytical machine that I'm building pretty much to maximize insight, maximize productivity, and then maximize impact, reach, and financial returns on my thinking effort. Like I'm pretty much fully dedicated now to building out the most systematic and effective machine I possibly can in this regard. And I have absolutely no superstitions or emotional attachments to any of it. I just want to make the most brutally functioning, well-oiled machine possible. Now, mind you, though, that to do that, you have to keep at a human scale, right? Because actually, what maximizes productivity today on the internet is maintaining a human scale, right? Like if everything you make looks like it's the result of botnets or something like that, people don't like that. It fails, right? So cold analytical rigor and productivity optimization right now, at least, is perfectly aligned with a kind of warm human scale authenticity. Those two things complement each other at the moment. We might get to a place where that's no longer the case. I mean, probably when AI gets so good that you can literally just produce all kinds of shit with bots, and it's indistinguishable from the human authenticity. Maybe we get to that point, in which case it's just balls to the wall, cold analytical productivity maximization that's going to win the intellectual games. But at least for the moment, we're in this sweet spot where being a human with real thoughts and feelings and writing in a real human way, but supplementing that productivity with a bunch of different automations and machine learning and stuff like that is kind of the sweet spot right now, where that's way better than anything AI alone can do. So, yeah. All right. All right, let's bring some people into the chat, I think. Maybe we'll do that in a few minutes. Nope is interested. Jacob is interested. Who else wants to join me? Who else wants to talk? Who wants to enter the big screen, the limelight, the spotlight, to a whopping 16 other people watching this right now? Yeah. Again, if you're a patron and you're here for the patron-only live stream, if you were hoping to feel exclusive, to be in the exclusive club, I'm sorry that I accidentally tweeted this out. The video is unlisted on YouTube. I thought it was anyway. So I thought that meant that no one gets any notifications about it. But maybe this is a learning experience. Oh yeah, the visibility is public. My bad. All right, well, whatever. Consider this a free sample, people. You get to see what the patron-only live streams are like. Usually I talk more about personal shit that I usually wouldn't talk about in like public. But now that I'm aware this is more or less public stream, the private intimacy of the patron-only live stream chat is unfortunately lost. What else? What kind of news do I have for you? No one's asking me questions or anything, so I'll wait. Probably what I'll do is at 12:30, I will invite anyone who has signed up in the chat, like Jacob and Nope, and anyone else who wants to join me and talk with the group in a big live clusterfuck. Just say you would like to join in the chat, and then I will invite you in 7 minutes. All right, Jacob, drink your coffee, buddy. Get pumped up. I'll give you 7 minutes, and then we will start. Jacob wants to know about my note management system. Dude, my note management system is, I have to say, I've refined it over years, and especially now that I'm like going pro on the internet, it's really forced me to make it even more rigorous and systematized. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. It's pretty complicated, to be honest with you. I mean, it works. I've built it up over time. I would have to sit down and kind of refine the principles to talk about it. But currently, it's pretty much a bunch of automations and workflows that I like have trained myself to do over and over again. So one essential moving part in my note management system is Feedly, the RSS reader. I do almost all of my internet news, blog post consumption on Feedly. For those of you who don't know, Feedly is it's an RSS management app. It's one of the ones that's been around for the longest. I think, as far as I know, it's the best on the market. And they have some cool new tools actually that just came out very recently, where they've introduced a whole bunch of AI kind of support services to help you find in the huge mass of RSS feeds that you might subscribe to. They've introduced some kind of machine learning functions to bump to the top of your feed the news articles that are of most interest to you. So you can tell it what the topics you're focusing on are. You can tell it a bunch of things that kind of define what you're most interested in, and it has some models to now give you a kind of more sophisticated experience where it tries to surface what you're most interested in. And so far, I think they work pretty well. But anyway, that's new. I've been using Feedly for years now. And I would say the main trick that I use that people might be interested in is I have the Feedly RSS app connects to these kind of popular automation services that are out now, where you don't have to do any code, but you basically it's a visual interface to set up automations essentially. Like you might have heard of them. IFTTT is one, and the other big one that I think is the best at the moment is Zapier. And so I have like a whole bunch of Zapier automations. And basically, the main workhorse for my note taking system is any blog post or anything on the internet that I'm interested in reading that I think is valuable and worth, potentially worth saving. Pretty much I try to do all my internet reading through Feedly. So Feedly has a read later function. So Feedly's good for two things. Like one is giving it all of the RSS feeds that you could possibly be interested in. So I give it like dozens and dozens of mainstream media, and then dozens and dozens of all the independent thinkers and bloggers and people out there that I'm interested in. So it's a bunch of RSS feeds, and it has utilities for managing that and reading them quickly and sleuthing through them, searching them, and stuff like that. And then, yeah, sharing them also. But even for stuff you find on the internet that's not within an RSS feed, like you just come across one random web page, like on Twitter or something like that, with something that you really want to read, I have a Google Chrome bookmarklet that will send that article to the Feedly read later tab in Feedly. And so pretty much you make the way my system works is just commit to reading everything on the internet through Feedly, either through the RSS feeds, or if you find it, send it to Feedly and read it later in Feedly. This also has the benefit of staggering your time. Like when you're on Twitter, you don't want to be constantly reading things. If you find something on Twitter that's, oh, this is really good, I should really read this, save it for later. Don't just be impulsive and like try to read an article in that moment. That's just going to suck up so much time. So anytime I come across an article that I think I should read or I want to read, I use my Google Chrome or Brave bookmarklet. I send it to Feedly. I add it to the queue, the read later queue. So then I do all my reading in Feedly. And Feedly has very nice functions for highlighting and for exporting and sharing clips and stuff like that. So what I do is I have automations in Zapier that take my highlights from Feedly, and then it does a bunch of shit with those highlights. So one is it creates a text file that is automatically lodged in DevonThink Pro, which is a desktop app that is basically a kind of a local storage system on my hard drive for everything. And that's kind of the big net at the bottom of everything for me. It's DevonThink, which is basically just this really massive, flexible document management system where it's good because you can just dump any type of document into there. It can kind of handle any possible thing. And I include in there kind of even personal stuff, private stuff. So that has no interaction with the web. I don't share anything like that. It's all private. So that's kind of the massive kind of dumpster, if you will, of just everything that I might need for anything at all. Research notes, but also personal documents, whatever. So every time I highlight something in Feedly, Zapier sends it to a bunch of other places. It sends it to a document in DevonThink. It sends it to a spreadsheet, which I share with patrons. It sends it to an RSS feed, which I share with patrons. So patrons who give me $5 a month or more, they get pretty much, they can follow everything I'm reading and everything I'm highlighting in real time. And they also get a searchable archive of everything I've highlighted since I've started the system or whatever. And it also, in Zapier, there's a filter there, and it says if it's less than 240 characters, then send this Feedly highlight to the Buffer app, and the Buffer app staggers tweets over time. So yeah, it's pretty complicated, honestly. I've been building out this automation system for I started building these automations like 3 years ago, pretty much. And as an academic, it was just kind of like something I worked on for fun over time. So now I have this like kind of ridiculously sophisticated system of automations where my reading highlights get passed through these different filters for different purposes. And then, value is essentially extracted from them and distributed into different pockets of my system in different ways. It's pretty, I don't think it's complicated. I think the logic is pretty simple, but it's fairly sophisticated in how I've designed it and iterated on it over time. So yeah, trying to think what else I could tell you more. Feedly distinguishes between highlights within a text and like starring or favoriting the text itself. So you can kind of do different things with that. You can kind of use that to send it to different places. And for another major kind of productivity thing is the newsletter that I do now. I now do a weekly newsletter. Every Friday morning, I send out a newsletter that I'm calling Signs of Life, which is basically my effort to survey the entire scene of independent thinkers on the internet, what I'm calling indie thinkers, just kind of eccentric, isolated, individual, independent thinkers who have, who are producing really high quality, highbrow, sophisticated content like intellectual, philosophical or scientific work, but they have no institutional affiliation and they're just kind of creative, badass, people on the internet doing their own thing. In Feedly, I have like dozens and dozens of RSS feeds of these types of people, and I also have Twitter lists of these people, and so I've like built this system where I think it's safe to say I probably have the single best bird's eye view of what I'm calling the indie thinkers kind of scene on the internet, and so I follow that all closely. And what I have set up in Zapier, I have automations that will take my highlights from the indie thinkers blogs that I'm following and deposit it into a text file that accumulates over time. So every time I make a highlight, it adds it cumulatively to a text file. And I've even set it up so that it adds HTML around the highlight so that it's properly styled to look good in the newsletter. So then on Friday mornings or Thursday nights, all I have to do is go into these text files and it's already all ready to roll. These are the highlights of the best stuff I've read from indie thinkers, essentially. And then it only takes me like, a half hour, maybe an hour at most, if I'm, being methodical with it all, to basically take those snippets that were collected from Feedly to Zapier and add them to the newsletter pretty much. So yeah, and since I've only just started this weekly newsletter, I've only recently kind of introduced this new automation system. So I'm going to be tweaking it for, a few weeks probably to get it perfect. But yeah, it's pretty cool. What I probably need to do, since you asked about this, if other people are interested in this also, you should definitely let me know, because I'm taking feedback like very seriously right now, like trying to create stuff that is actually responsive to what people most value. So yeah, I mean, if there is interest in this stuff, and I suspect there is, I guess like this is a huge industry, right? Like self-help kind of productivity maximization stuff. I've been hesitant to wade into it just because I'm trying to stay focused on my kind of lofty, highbrow, kind of intellectual research agendas, and I don't want to get lost in becoming like a productivity guru. But I definitely have a lot of cool shit I've learned in it and some cool systems I've set up over the years of being an academic and being an internet person. So probably if people are interested, I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to like formulate all this stuff and share it. So you just have to tell me if there are other people that are interested in this. I'd be happy to make some content kind of spelling out my system and showing you how to do that kind of stuff if you're interested in it or whatever. Jim asks, am I a subscriber to Feedly? Yeah, I am. Philip Daniel in the house, what's up? Thomas says I need to check out Rome Research. Honestly, I looked into it. I don't get it. It's just one of those things where like the value proposition is not obvious enough to me. If someone wants to make that value proposition clear to me or understand why it's so good or whatever, I'd be happy to consider it. But I did look into it for like 15 minutes and it was not obvious. And, generally I'm very, very brutal when it comes to those sort of judgments. If I can't find the value proposition pretty intuitively, then I'm not gonna really like waste a lot of time, because you can get so lost fucking around with productivity tools and shit like that. And I have pretty good systems that work. So I have to come across something that's like really evidently valuable to really start playing with it. Oh, Jim Johnson says that one of my RSS posts has a date of June 2030, so it's always at the top. Thank you. I'll try to fix that. Thanks for letting me know. All right. So we're halfway through this. We'll go a little bit longer if we need to, if there's energy. But we're halfway through this, what was supposed to be a patron-only live stream. I accidentally put it out in public. So if you're here from the public and you're wondering what's going on, that's what you have found yourself in. And so what I often do in these live streams in these patron-only live streams is I welcome in people to join me in the chat so people can see your face and hear your voice. Oh, Jacob. Yeah, Jacob says he did the building a second brain course. Yeah, I've encountered that. It seems like a genius marketing tactic. No, people don't have to leave. This is public now. It's my fault. I made it public when it wasn't supposed to be, but so it's just a public hangout now, so that's fine. Yeah, that Tiago Forte guy, he seems interesting. I'm sure he's very smart. I haven't taken it. I haven't looked into it, so I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if it's good. I can't say a single thing about it, other than the fact that I looked into it enough to know, like, seems like very good marketing. He has a very good knack for, selling this. I mean, I was looking through it. It seemed compelling. Almost made me want to buy it. Personally, I'm just like too much of a working class stiff to. I don't think I could drop $600 for that kind of course where someone else is teaching me any productivity. I think probably just because, aside from the fact that I'm a working class stiff, as I said, I've been developing my own productivity system for like at least 3 or 4 years from being an academic and also doing the internet stuff. So I just have my own system that I really like, that I think is really good. So I personally wouldn't sign on to that kind of thing, but I'd be curious to know what he did, what the course is all about. Jacob says his second brain system is not systematic enough. So yeah, we can talk about it. I'd love to know more about what that Tiago Forte guy's offering. He seems to be killing it, so people must like it. Good for him. All right. If you want to join me now, you can join me. All right. So check this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post into the YouTube chat. I'm going to post the link that you need to join me in the live stream. Okay. So this is implicitly on a come first serve basis. Okay. I literally don't know how many people are allowed. I don't know how many people the system can handle, but I'm just going to post the link. So anyone who wants to click this link is going to be brought into the broadcast studio. All right. And we're just going to have a free for all. Hopefully Richard Spencer is not watching this, because I have no control over who's going to be on my live stream. Here we go. So if you click that link that I just posted, then you will appear in my broadcast studio and I will add you. It should be interesting. Oh. All right, Jacob in the house. What's up, dude?
Am I the first one?
Yes, sir.
I was rushing to do it. I wanted to beat everybody else.
Well, apparently there's not a lot of competition. We'll see though.
Oh, well, good morning.
Good morning, Jacob. How you doing?
Not bad. Not bad.
Right,
just
in the house. What's up, dude?
Just booting up.
One?
Oh, Jacob, I can hear myself on yours, so yeah.
Got it. I had to pause the YouTube video.
All right, we got Antoine in the house. What's up, Antoine?
Sweet.
I think Jason Nope was also keen to join, so he'll be here, I'm sure, in a minute. Who else is going to be daring enough to join the Justin Murphy live stream on impromptu Saturday morning? Jacob, tell us how was Tiago Forte's building a second brain?
No, I haven't took it yet, but I seriously thought about taking it.
Yeah.
And I've been sort of like following his blog posts and stuff and seeing if I can steal his ideas without paying him.
Yeah.
So, because, you have to give away a little bit for free.
Right. Yeah, I think the value of those sorts of courses, it's not really the information provided in the course. It's mostly the self-binding impact of dropping a large sum of money, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, well, also as part of that course, like they're supposed to walk you through like setting up your own note-taking system. So like you're literally at some point going to get someone to say like, did you set up your note-taking system in the way that we taught to do in the course? So you will have it set up by the end.
Oh, right. So it's a kind of like social and third-party enforcement kind of value that whether you want to or not, whether you have the discipline to do it yourself, by the time you're done, you will have a system.
Yes.
Yeah, I that's true. And that's cool. I mean, I think it's basic kind of like self-hacking psychology. Like you need to make a costly commitment to take something seriously. So it's like,
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I just want to put out the offer. If you're in the Austin area and you want me to stand over your shoulder while you do a bunch of shit that you don't want to do, like I'm available at $30 an hour.
I think you should say like $500 an hour.
$500 an hour.
Because maybe $30 an hour, if you make good money, that's not enough to force them to do it. $30 doesn't feel that costly enough.
I felt bad about saying 30 because, like, my wage is probably around 100. So, so it's probably, it has to be at least 100, like 200, because I have to drive back and forth and manage it. So that's my level.
Antoine, what's going on with you, man?
I've been trying to make this test for creativity for like months, and it's just been a ridiculous task trying to get anyone to help me make it. Maybe I'm bad at communicating how to do that or what I need, but it's soul-sucking.
Word. Yes, the trials and tribulations of independent intellectual work. It's difficult, isolating, sad, and depressing. Folks, it is not glamorous. It is not sexy. It's hard and depressing. So, yes. Jaime Sefa says, nice Columbia jacket. Yeah, I can only afford to buy stuff like this secondhand. I got this at a thrift store. I'm not yet at a place in my professional life where I can afford to like buy nice brands new. But thank you. I'm glad that. But I'm also at an age where I'm sensitive to like brand signaling. So I used to not care about brands, and now, if I'm being perfectly honest, I kind of care about the brands that I wear. Probably because I am like income and status insecure right now, not psychologically or emotionally, but objectively. Now I actually do care as a 33-year-old man who's like, depending on how you describe me, either unemployed and crazy or like an entrepreneur or something. The brands that I wear actually do have an emotional effect on me, but I can't afford to buy nice ones. So the solution is I go to thrift stores. I spend a lot of time in thrift stores looking for like Nike, Columbia, Land's End, Patagonia. Like, what are the other like posh brands that like tech people use to signal their like income and outdoorsiness? Those are the ones I'm pretty much looking for. What's up, Thomas? How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, I can hear you. Thomas,
Okay, great.
You are brand new to me. I've never seen your face or seen your name that I can remember. Tell us about yourself. Who the fuck are you?
So my friend Tashim, he's Vers Laloon on Twitter, introduced me to you, and I'm more of a recent follower, and this just popped up on my YouTube page today when I was going to watch some videos, so I figured I'd join in and see what was up.
Cool. What's your story?
Story in what sense?
What's your personal story in a nutshell?
Well, I'm a software developer. I'm from New Jersey. I just recently moved away from New York City because I'm looking for a new job. And yeah, so
where are you living now?
I'm living in New Jersey. I moved back in with my parents for a few months until I have a new job again.
Nice. How old are you?
I'm 23.
Right on.
So fairly young. I dropped out of school a couple of years ago. I was kind of tired of like living in the academy, and I was tired of the professors, and I was tired of spending all the money necessary to get an undergraduate degree. And I figured I could get a software developer position without the degree, and I did. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this then and make some money. So yeah.
Are you sound like one of my friends?
Yeah.
You sound like one of my friends that now works for Urbit.
Oh, Urbit? Oh yeah, I'm really into Urbit right now. That's a pretty cool product.
Yeah, he dropped out of his senior year of college to work at a startup because it was late 2017 where the Bitcoin market was going crazy, and he's like, every month I spend here like lowers my ultimate wealth by an order of magnitude. So I need to go work and start buying Bitcoin. And so he went to some shitty startup in the Bay Area, and then bounced ship to Urbit and been there ever since.
Well, what's your friend's name? Because I might know the name.
Logan.
I think Logan. Why do I feel like I've heard Logan Urbit?
He was recently on a podcast.
Yes, that guy. Oh my God, I was interviewing at a company, Rome Research. Actually, that's the that's why I was mentioning it earlier.
Well, I know Connor from just.
Oh yeah. I was living in that house for a week with him and all the other people at Gentle Mesa, so that was cool. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, but they were having a Urbit meetup in SF at their headquarters, so I decided to go. It was my last day there, and there was a Logan and some other guy, I forget his name. He was also on that podcast. Were presenting about Bitcoin and Urbit integration or something. Really interesting stuff.
I just now got to the point that I think I can talk about Urbit intelligently.
I still don't think I can. I started learning the Hoon programming language or whatever. It's a really it's an odd esoteric language as far as programming languages go. Like a lot of the basic symbols in the language don't have like human readable names. They're just like two symbols together. Like there will be like an equal sign and then a slash, and then you have to like remember what that actually means instead of just reading the word and like figuring out the actual logic of the code. Now you have to learn a whole bunch of.
So you know the story is that Curtis Yarvin was inspired by watching his kids learn Chinese.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Whoa.
and he understood that like the human brain can actually cache a lot of symbols that they can pull up really quick if once you memorize it. So he knew it would create a higher learning curve, but he thought like once people got the handle of all these sigils, that they'd be actually able to like recall them and use them much quicker than long labeled names. Like if you're writing JavaScript, you'll write a function that will say like make factory complex blog post or something, and in Urbit it'll be just a couple of symbols, and so he thinks it'll increase the information transfer speed.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Wait, someone's microphone is loud and I can hear them typing real loud, so if you're not talking, consider muting yourself. We got a new person, JJ, who I've never interacted with before, so tell us about yourself, JJ.
Hi, Justin Murphy. I've been watching your streams and content sporadically since I saw you do an interview with Christlubber 2K from Girls Chat.
Good friend of mine. Good internet friend of mine.
Yeah, excellent content. So I'm currently a master's student, and I'm a geologist, but I'm also interested in overarching political and philosophical weirdness. So
cool.
That kind of sphere online has been a place that I've gravitated towards, I guess.
Cool. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Louisiana, but I'm from Michigan. So
right on. Cool. So you're going to school in Louisiana?
That's correct.
Cool. Do you have a presence on the internet, like otherwise, like on any other platforms or anything?
Yes, but I'd prefer to keep them to myself. If only just to.
I forgot to ask you, Thomas. Do you have any presence on like other platforms? I'm
on Twitter. My username is just Tom Lasanki, so the same name but just TOM. I actually prefer Thomas, but I just figured I'd make it so people have to type fewer characters to reach me. Justin, I was going to ask you, what was your impressions from the Bard interview you had the other day? I've been reading through some of his books, the Futrica trilogy and Syntheism, and he's really brilliant.
Thank you for asking. I'll tell you my comments on that in just a minute real quick. Let me just say that we've now hit the limit. So GG Pal, I see you hanging out in the broadcast studio. I'll bring you in just a minute. Hang tight. What I'm going to have to do now is start like cycling through people. So I have to think about how to do that. But so if anyone wants to like after a few minutes volunteer to leave, I can bring in other people, or I'll just be merciless in cutting people periodically to make room for the newcomers. But GG Pal, I see you. Just hang tight, and when the time is right, I'll cut one of these people and bring you in. If no one drops out. And by the way, hi Jason. Nope. What's going on, man? I see you there.
Hey, how's it going? I'm good. I'm gonna try and behave myself since it's a public stream.
Well, Well, I know who you are, so no need to introduce yourself. Thomas is, yeah, so to answer your question, you asked about, I recently did a podcast with this guy, Alexander Bard. I don't know if any of you know of him. I never heard of him until he contacted me. He contacted me through this website called LetterWiki. LetterWiki is a startup that's about basically like trying to transform kind of public communication and allow for sophisticated dialogues between people. And I actually did a private Skype call with the founders not long ago. They wanted to talk with me about some things, and they're these nice young men from Australia. They're currently interviewing at Y Combinator, and apparently they're having really good user growth for LetterWiki. They got a lot of people on there, and it seems to be accelerating. I'm sort of not sure about their monetization model. Like, I'm not, from a business perspective, I personally don't quite get it, but I'm my fingers are crossed for them. Anyway, LetterWiki is how Alexander Bard contacted me, and apparently he's a wild man from the internet, and like he's like a multimedia kind of wild man. But he's from Sweden, and that's apparently where he's famous. He's like quite famous, but only in Sweden. It's kind of weird. Like I never heard of him at all ever until he contacted me. Then I looked him up on Twitter. He has like 100,000 followers on Twitter. He's apparently like a judge on the Swedish version of American Idol. So he's like a Swedish like TV star / like internet wild man, and he does real philosophy. I mean, he's like very well read and has like interesting, coherent, ideas about like Nietzsche, and can speak pretty, fluently and about the history of philosophy and stuff like that. In my talk with him, there were people in the comments who were kind of like talking shit, like he makes stuff up and calling bullshit on him. But I mean, I don't know. I can't. Most of the people who follow my stuff know that that's not really what I'm judging people for. Like, I'm just interested in people who are interesting and highly productive and creative and disciplined in building like some sort of creative, independent, lifelong public project. Really, I don't really judge. I judge for a certain kind of quality, but not for like a kind of scholastic. I don't judge for like scholastic standards, really. Personally, it's just not what I'm interested in. So I can't really say much about the kind of academic or scholastic qualities of his work or his books. I haven't read his books, but he definitely was cool. I enjoyed talking with him. He seemed really fun and interesting, high energy guy. And he definitely seemed like a legitimate kind of badass in my sense of the term. Like, I'd say he's the real deal as far as I'm concerned. To me, that means, he's clearly trying and is, with consistency, living a life of kind of radical honesty and saying what he wants whenever he wants, and, trying to carve out an independent path where he's maximally free intellectually and creatively. And he seems like he's done a damn good job of that, at least in Sweden. And I enjoyed talking with him. That's my 2 cents. What do you think, Thomas, or anyone else want to chime in?
Oh, I really enjoyed it. So my friend I was living with before I just moved recently, he interviewed Bard as well. And he's been a huge fan of Bard for a long, long time now. He was the only one. He actually introduced me to Bard, and he's the only person I've ever met who knew who Bard was. And he's generally into really esoteric, weird books that no one's heard of. So I found it really interesting. I mean, a lot of the stuff I already knew because I've seen a lot of interviews with him and read his books and whatnot. But yeah, really good nonetheless.
Word.
Really interesting.
Hey, Thomas, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Are you getting that good of mic quality off of your built-in microphone on your laptop?
No, not really. I don't know which microphone it's coming from right now. If it's my headset or this, I'd have to check my sound settings. But
I think it's your headset.
yeah, it is good. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, that's good to
good.
know. Great.
How do I sound? Oh shit! Wait, my mic fell. How do I sound? Bad, probably. My mic was like on the other side of the room. Do I sound okay?
Oh, you sounded fine. Now
Really?
you sound better though. Yeah.
I have this lapel mic, but I forgot to put it on, so I'm surprised you guys were hearing me at all. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, Thomas, how would you describe the quality that you look for in potential guests?
Me?
Yes.
I think I just described it pretty much. Like I'm looking for intensity and authenticity and weirdness, creativity. I often use this phrase of like the real deal. I'm looking for the real deal. And to me, that's this kind of like weighted function of just kind of like wild, fearless, independent, intellectual intensity, pretty much like that. There's just like a particular cocktail of those things that, to me, kind of constitute my own personal sense of what like a true intellectual is. And that's generally like what I aspire to maximize. And that's generally like what I look for in other people. But, personality traits differ, and, there are different takes on that. They're definitely different. That can look very different in different contexts. So I have a pretty open mind, but that's in a nutshell, I guess, how I think about it. Plus a lot of randomness. Like I purposely select people with a pretty good dose of randomness, because I don't think that I know. It's hard to know what's worth paying attention to, and I think you have to subject yourself to a fair dose of randomness just to kind of keep yourself on your toes.
So are you looking for the other Diogeneses?
In a sense, but that's a very particular. Yeah, kind of. But as I said, I really do think that kind of manifests in different ways, and there can be like autistic geniuses who are doing like really cool work, but they don't look cool. They don't sound cool. They don't have any kind of signifiers of like badass creativity. They're just like, maybe they have like a badass blog with really good stuff on it. That would qualify for the type of thing that I'm looking for. Or maybe they're actually, they don't have much substance, and they've never really written, they haven't written too much of note, or I have never read anything that they've written, but they're like really consistent and disciplined with like high energy, weird perspective on Twitter or some other platform. It can manifest in many different ways, but this kind of like radical, authentic, independent intellectual spirit, I guess the way I would describe it is like, I only need to see a little bit of it from one particular angle to be sufficiently curious about it, to make it worthwhile pursuing, and to talk with the person, or at least send them an email, or to poke around under the hood. It can manifest in many different ways, but yeah, just some sort of wild, undomesticated, uninstitutionalized, freewheeling, authentic, driven intellectual spirit. However that might manifest, if I think it's there in some sort of interesting way, I'll pursue it, and I'm usually going to be open to at least talking with them via email, and then maybe if there's like something there, doing like a live stream. I guess like as my stuff grows, I guess I'm becoming a little bit more like rigorous in what I'm looking for, but I still try to force myself to have a good dose of randomness and whatever.
How many of these people would you say you found in that, like, through indie thinkers?
What do you mean by through indie thinkers?
Or like have or are in indie thinkers? I guess, because I'd imagine you know most of them before.
Indiethinkers.org now has somewhere about 30 paying members, which is great. It's off to a great start. But like, I have this kind of spreadsheet. I literally have a spreadsheet where every time I find a possible interesting kind of candidate for my definition of kind of radical, independent intellectual, I add them to the spreadsheet. And that's like probably it has about 300 entries at the moment. Oh no, GG Pal dropped off, the guy who was waiting. Sorry, GG Pal. I was planning on bringing you in any moment. So if you want to come back in, I will let you in. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, and honestly, like it expands more and more, honestly. There's so many interesting people out there. I find new people every day. Now, like once you start looking for it, you find like, it's really exciting. The internet is filled with crazy people, man. It's if you know how to look for it, it's really cool.
Could you drop a name of one of the most slept on radical intellectuals you found?
This is availability bias, so I'll just give you pretty much the most recent one that is in my mind. Not necessarily the best, but a good one. I recently came across this very obscure blog, not even a blog, but a website, pretty much, of just plain text files. It's like bare bones, like early web, just web pages, static, blank HTML files, essentially, of these essays on Deleuze by a woman named Beth Metcalf. There's absolutely no information about this Beth Metcalf anywhere. She did have an email somewhere, which I found, so I emailed her. But if you search for Beth Metcalf Deleuze, you'll find this woman's website. and it's something like 25, something like that, essays, like not super long, but reasonable lengths, about the concept of univocity in Deleuze, and it's really good. Like it's easy to read. It's like intuitive and not dense Deleuzian bullshit. It's actually like a coherent and unique original interpretation of Deleuze in like more than 20 long essays, and they're easy to read. They're intuitive. They're actually helpful. They're actually useful in decoding what Deleuze was trying to do. And just this random woman with no other web presence otherwise. I emailed her actually, and we've been chatting. I tried to get her on the live stream, but she said she doesn't do well with speaking, so she didn't want to. And I was telling her she should really organize her notes into a book and sell an ebook, or at least, because I told her, I was like, about 200 people bought my book. And if they bought my book, they're definitely going to be interested in yours. So I was like, if you make an ebook, Beth, like tell me, I'll share it with all the people who bought my book. I'm sure they would like it or whatever. It's good. It's really good stuff. You should do something with it. And she said she'd think about it. But that's just the most recent example. Yeah. If you start looking for these types of people, you find cool stuff all over the place.
Justin, what's the entelos of revolutionary politics?
Yeah, I don't know what the telos is. I mean, the telos, I think, would ultimately be something like God or heaven, probably. And as earthly beings, it's a bit of a cop out, but I think I would say like whatever the telos is, we never really get there. Is my instinct. But it's probably the telos is towards some sort of abstract ideal that we as earthly creatures have limited access to, or finite access to, that we never really fully grasp or arrive at, except perhaps in some sort of limit state, like after our death, or however, that's a whole other kind of can of conceptual worms. But or the long-term future or something like this. The answer is going to be, however you define it or translate it, the answer is going to be some sort of abstraction that represents a kind of ideal. And but I do tend to think that the pathway there, or the journey to that telos, is pretty much like similar in all the different domains. It's pretty much a kind of increasingly radical process of kind of disruptive truth telling, like costly truth telling. Pretty much is whether you're doing art or science or politics or whatever the case might be. These are different registers for essentially the same operation. And yeah, I think probably the ultimate telos of radical truth telling is essentially, it's bringing the kingdom of heaven down to earth. Essentially, it's communism, heaven, God. These things, I think, are essentially convergent. Everyone has everything they need, and justice is done equally for all. And this kind of perfect abstraction of truth and justice is the ultimate telos. But whether or not we ever get there is anyone's guess, I guess. What do you think?
Well, I've been rereading a few of your old posts, starting with the one you wrote on how to have an impact with your family at Christmas, relax and have fun with them. Mm-hmm. Like, you went on a little rant of 6 to 8 blog posts there, sort of critiquing left-wing activism as recapitulating the structures of bourgeois hypocrisy in a new social status structure. Mm. And I think I was trying to pull out the threads of like what your main arguments were for like what the true revolutionary politics were, and it was something like, I mean, truth and humanity were like two things. Like, truth and maybe openness to other people's humanity were the two things that I think you were critiquing the left for losing. And so I was trying to think, well, what is true revolutionary politics in Justin's mind then? Like, there is revolution is sort of has this the structure of like undermining and critiquing, and I think that your critique is also something like mainstream revolutionary politics isn't revolutionary enough in that it doesn't critique itself, and that if it did critique itself, when it gets stuck in the structure of like dishing out status to whoever's angriest.
Right.
But it would continue to evolve, and that evolution would ultimately be guided by something like truth and also some amount of humanity. And I was trying to draw a line there from that to sort of the new stuff that you're on paresis, I think you call it, or devaluing
Paresia,
Paresia.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to wrap my head around that recently about what revolution is.
Right. No, that all sounds right. So I'll speak to that for just a minute, and thank you for asking. And then I'm kind of probably talking too much, and I'll let other people speak. Like Nope has not said a word, so I'll let Nope get in some words, and I'll open it up. Oh, and here's GG Pal. Hey, dude, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Thanks for waiting. Sorry you had to wait for so long.
Oh, that's all good, bro.
So I will. How about I'll speak to that in just a minute? But GG Pal, real quick, why don't you tell us what's your story? What's going on?
Okay, so currently I'm in undergrad, majoring in communications, and I'm trying to get into the independent scholar thing, and so I'm reading up on the literature right now, reading up on Lacan and Hegel, and so I'm pretty much trying to get enough material to get my stuff started. I just finished school, and so I'm pretty much free to work my projects now.
Awesome. Cool, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. Cool. So yeah, feel free to chime in at any time. So all right. So real quick, I'll answer Jacob's question, and then I'll let you all talk. Pretty much, yeah. The way I would summarize it in the kind of most everyday conversational tone would be that, on some level, I see all injustice in the world as essentially built on lies or errors or mistakes. And so I essentially think that revolutionary politics boils down to destroying lies or errors or mistakes. And if we can imagine an abstract world in which all lies have been destroyed, all mistakes have been corrected, and all errors have been corrected, we would essentially have a kind of perfect state of heaven, or that would be the representation of bringing the kingdom of heaven down to earth as Jesus sought to do, or that would be essentially full communism, as kind of the Marxist stream kind of implicitly imagines it. And so pretty much that's why I focus primarily on the tactics and strategies that are empirically reliable in their tendency to remove or decrease lies, errors, or mistakes. And I think the problem in social life and a lot of political life is that to create systems that work, you usually have to make some sort of compromise with the truth. There's this kind of seemingly irrevocable, kind of unavoidable or ineluctable structure in the world where it's like, to make something function concretely, you have to simplify or cut some sort of corner with respect to the radical truth itself. And so you see this with like science and statistics and engineering, right? Like, to have a model of something that is actually functional, a model that stands up and is useful, by definition in science, you're simplifying, right? You're choosing to ignore certain other things. That's a kind of lie. It's a kind of compromise. And this seems to be like a pretty pervasive structure in things. Like it almost seems to be some sort of like natural law or something. Like to create a system that is stable and functional, you have to, at best, ignore other data points to purchase that stability or functionality. And that is useful. That can be useful. But in that usefulness, in that instrumental rationality, we make a compromise with the actual radical truth of what is really the case in the most general way. And so the role of the philosopher, of the artist, of the scientist, of the radical intellectual, in my view, and of the revolutionary, of the political revolutionary, all of these tasks in their true radical state tend to converge toward the elimination of those compromises, the elimination of those lies or errors or mistakes. And that almost always has the implication that you're increasing the kind of store of truth in the world, but by implication, you're decreasing some kind of usefulness somewhere. Like like radical truth is always at a cost to something that is useful and functional elsewhere in the system. And this is why the radical philosopher is always hated. By definition, the radical philosopher is always disliked, or at best ignored and seen as a kind of annoyance or a gadfly, like Socrates or whatever the case might be, or executed like Giordano Bruno or Jesus Christ, or pick your favorite example. And that is because the essential work of increasing the circulation of truth in the world always destroys something that someone wants to work, some type of work or functionality that someone previously purchased through some kind of compromise with the absolute radical truth. And so, yeah, I think revolutionary politics essentially boils down to this kind of militant truth telling that is destructive of someone's instrumental investments elsewhere in the system.
Do you think that there's currently people out there who are so controversial, and so these revolutionary philosophers, as you call them, that even any interaction with them would be detrimental to your sustainability, your family's income, let's say, or your reputation, your ability to actually even be invited on anything whatsoever?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is true for everyone. And what's interesting to note is that it's fragmented and subdivided in such a way that, like, for instance, some people will judge it in their own life that it's too costly to come on the Justin Murphy live stream, because for who they are, for who their friends are, for their investments, for their instrumental, purposes, that would be too costly for them to even associate with me. And I'm, as far as I'm concerned, like relatively milquetoast politically. Like I genuinely think I've never really said anything that's actually too dicey. But for some people, I'm too costly because I'm at a certain level in a certain way with a certain vocabulary in a certain pocket of society that for their instrumental investments, it would be too destructive of their own instrumental investments. And same thing for me. Like I think, and this is where you can see that this is a real objective dilemma. This is not like something you can paper over. This is in the structure of things in some sense. And this is why it's so hard to achieve justice. This is why it's so hard to achieve liberation or to bring the kingdom of heaven down to earth. There's a reason why no human generation has quite fully succeeded in this yet. And it is because of this kind of structural foundational tension. Like I'm not as radical a philosopher as I would like to be, because I do have practical investments. I do have like I have a wife who's like not a crazy woman, and she like doesn't want her husband to do certain like extremely excessive things. I have to be practical and instrumental about keeping myself in line to some degree because I need to survive and I need to maintain some basic functional systems, right? Like to maintain any functional system, you have to make some kind of compromise with like maximal radical truth telling, or what Deleuze and Guattari call absolute deterritorialization. Like if you go towards absolute deterritorialization with kind of absolute recklessness, you just explode and wither away and die. It's like the definition of functional unsustainability in some sense. And that's why it's so hard for us as humans to build communities of like truly radical truth telling or truly liberating kind of equality or communism or heaven or these abstract ideals. There's a reason it's so hard for us to get to them, and it is because these are foundational tensions that we've never really solved quite yet. But I think it's a worthwhile task to try to solve them.
Let me just ask you one last question. How do you personally draw the line for between people you will interact with and people that you would consider too risky to interact with, at least on a public level?
Yeah, personally, I have a very simple heuristic for that. And it's not to be perfectly honest, it's not very philosophically sophisticated. It's practical. It's instrumental. Because you could draw this line in any different way. You could say, I'm not going to talk with anyone who like says, like, you could say, okay, I'll talk with anyone in the world except if they've murdered someone, right? I mean, that's one line you could draw. That's kind of a reasonable criterion, right? But it's just one criterion among many. I don't know the science of drawing this line. I don't know the single philosophical silver bullet that demonstrates some sort of like really philosophically valid and compelling bright line between who a radical philosopher should talk with in good faith and who they should choose to not talk with in good faith. I would love to hear an argument to that effect. The best I have come up with personally is I don't talk with white nationalists. Just because it's a relatively clear line. I don't think there's anything sacred about that line, but it's a relatively clear line. Like pretty much if someone wants to come on my live stream or they want me to come on their live stream and they invite me on, here's what I do. I'll tell you straight up. I do a quick search. I Google their name. I Google the name of their podcast. And I just look at like the last like 20 things they've posted. And all I'm asking is, can I see anything that's like white power signaling stuff, pretty much. And if there's no white nationalist stuff, then I'll say, yeah, sure, I'll talk with you. I don't care. Even if they look a little edgy or a little dicey, or maybe they're into some wacky shit that I don't think is cool or good or whatever. If I don't see any like white nationalist shit, I'll talk with them. If I see white nationalist stuff, then I just say, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And look, that's not a perfect heuristic, because maybe I totally accept in principle there could be people out there who are good people, interesting, smart people with valuable stuff to say, but maybe one of their last 20 tweets said something good about white people, and maybe I see that and I'm like, I don't want to talk with them because I'm not into white nationalist stuff personally. And so there are error rates, right? Like there is no perfect heuristic, but that is my heuristic just because it's relatively clear cut. It's fairly predictive, I think, of the types of people I'm interested in, the types of people I'm not interested in. And yeah, but I've made very clear, I've said this many times, that frankly, I don't think this is like a philosophically sacred rule or line. I just think it's the decision I've made, and I think other people have to draw their own lines in their own way. But what do you all think? I want to hear from the rest of you.
So the line is if the person that says something good about white people, therefore they're too toxic. I get it. It's fine.
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, you know what I'm saying. Like, I'm trying to be clear that any decision rule has error rates, right? Like, and you just have to kind of pick something that makes sense for you. And yeah, I personally, I'm just not into like pro-white people politics. I find it boring. I find it uninteresting and not valuable. Like, I'm not into it. I think it's potentially quite harmful and dangerous sometimes, but I don't think it's necessarily evil. To be perfectly honest, that's a somewhat edgy take, but to just say that like pro-white politics is not necessarily evil, a lot of people would jump on me for even saying that. But so I'm not actually, I think there can be reasonable people out there. This is a whole other can of worms, honestly, which, unless you guys have multiple hours and want to talk about this, we probably shouldn't even get down to it. But I think that pretty much articulates my viewpoint. I mean, how would I want to hear from you all? Like, if you guys had a podcast, maybe some of you do, if you have a public kind of platform, where do you all draw the line? And like, what is like too dubious or sketchy or evil or something like that you would refuse to be associated with in public or to give a platform to in public? How would you guys draw that line? I would love to hear. Are you all like free speech absolutists in the sense of like absolutely anyone, like if you had like a podcast with any kind of following, like absolutely anyone is allowed on? Or
if I had a podcast or something, I think I'd draw the line in like people, as you said, like white nationalists and stuff. That's just, why am I talking to this person? Like, we're probably not going to get anywhere, we're probably not going to convince each other of either one of our beliefs in regards to that, and it'll be too much of an elephant in the room to really discuss anything else. So those people, people who think like what the philosophy, the authoritarian philosophy of something like Soviet Russia was fine and are proudly waving like hammer and sickle flags today. Those people are cool, especially anyone who's advocating a philosophy that has a history of mass murder is not all right, I think.
Yeah, but then you can't, right? And communism also. Like, see, the reason I don't buy that principle is that, like, I think it's perfectly defensible to try to develop new and defensible versions of communism. Like, I think communism as a term is totally rotten, right? It is historically, it is a kind of murderous philosophy. And if you look at most of its practical instantiations, it's true, right? Communism does have this kind of correlation with mass murder. But I find it acceptable to try to theorize a kind of defensible new type of communism that avoids the horrors of communism as we know it. But no, like I just don't have the guts or the balls or the patience or the bandwidth at the moment to say that of like Nazism. You know, like I'm going to start featuring like people who want to put a new spin on Nazism and make it good. You know, like in principle, honestly, I would be a hypocrite if I denied that possibility, right? Like in principle, there could be some really smart, good-natured young person out there who's like trying to create a new type of digital Nazism that avoids all the horrors of historical Nazism. Like, who am I to say that that's totally impossible, right? Like, if I'm being consistent, I have to kind of say.
But would you talk to a Asian racial nationalist?
Me personally, yeah, probably, because in Western culture, like Asians are allowed to be racist.
Right. Okay. So it's not the principle. It's the risk that's the real thing that you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. I'm trying to be honest about the fact that we all draw our lines in ways that are not philosophical or valid. They're just practical. Like I don't currently have the bandwidth to deal with like white nationalists. Like I could. I just don't. I don't want like if I had like white nationalists on my show, that would bring me into a new level of like, oh, like people already call me alt-right and shit like that, and I get heat and hate on the internet, and it affects my family and my and stuff like that. Like I'm already a certain level. I can tolerate. I'm pretty far out. Like I'm pretty good on that. I'm pretty daring and pretty bold, I think, and fearless. But everyone has to draw their lines, and I'm just being honest and real about that. I draw that white nationalism. Like I could have white nationalists on. I don't, for what it's worth, by the way. Like I personally don't think it's evil or bad to platform white nationalists or any type of evil person. Like I think I am a free speech absolutist in principle, philosophically. I think it's perfectly justifiable for any human being to have any conversation with any other human being about anything. That's free speech absolutism. I believe in that in principle. So this is why I have no problem with white nationalists being on YouTube. I have no problem with like the most evil people talking freely in public and on digital communication platforms. I want them to have the freedom to talk. Everyone has to draw their own lines about who they kind of talk with and associate with. And if I were to start having white nationalists, it would just be a new level of controversy and provocation, and people being even more certain that I'm like an evil Nazi. And I just personally don't want to deal with that. So at this moment anyway, and there could come a time when I felt comfortable having conversations with like more dubious characters. There could totally come a time, but that would be, I'm being honest and realistic about the fact that this is essentially an arbitrary personal preference about how much of a shitstorm can you handle in your life.
Justin, I've been thinking about this issue a bit as I've moved into live streaming, or even with my past in blogging. I used to write about some, I would say, center-right politics. And around 2013, after there was a bit of a purge in Silicon Valley, I took down a lot of my old blog posts, things about pushing an immigration restrictionist point of view, things opposing abortion. I'm like, I can't have that as a liability in work. But after that trauma was about 6 years ago, and I've sort of I'm easing back out into the public right now, doing live streams, podcasts, blog posts. My challenge is I want to actually like let myself be a little bit more based in public, and then the question is, how can I do that? How can I find like the right level of based? Because my last live stream, we talked about a culture war topic, and I waffled so much that it was almost a lie. I mean, it was getting to the point. I didn't outright lie, but I was misrepresenting what I believed, and I was disgusted with myself after. And so I want to like push the line of what I allow myself to say in public a little bit more, and then but I don't want to step over the line where I'm letting myself be like defined by my antipathy for certain movements on the left. Like if I really let myself go, like I could do an Alex Jones hour where I like foam at the mouth about like the evils of some left-wing movements, and I feel like that pigeonholes you in a particular mode of speech, and you're not going to reach. You're only going to reach certain people from there on out. You're going to have a trash audience. So, and I think like the more effective way to do social activism or commentary is probably to be a little bit more meta and not get into like knockdown, drag out arguments with people on the opposite side of an issue.
Yes.
But try to like more appeal to like shared values and things like this. So I'm definitely have a lot of self-loathing about my lack of authenticity, and this is an area that I'm actively experimenting in, and it feels scary and but worthwhile.
Yeah, it's a minefield for sure. It's difficult. What do the rest of you think? Thomas, GG Pal, Antoine, you want to?
Also,
Yeah.
I wanted to throw out there that Antoine suggested we do a round of based or cringe, and I think that's a great idea.
Okay, we can do that at the end.
I'm comfortable talking with anyone, as I think that, but I wouldn't talk with anyone just because, like, of course, there's like you have like some like hierarchy of productive uses of your time. Like I think
Right. That's a good point.
like I can make any conversation productive, but it doesn't mean that I should try to do this with anyone. Like, of course, if someone like you has options and other things to do, it makes total sense not to be talking with a Nazi, even if you think that, or not even a Nazi, but a white nationalist or a murderer or something, even if you think that it could work out well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You got to make wagers about what's worth doing, even apart from any moral judgment. And that's a really good point too. That is also how I see it. Also, that it's like I'm personally just not into white nationalism. I just don't think it's a worthwhile pathway. Apart from moral, like I'm not virtue signaling. I don't even care about moralism. I'm just saying I'm not interested in it. So it makes sense to draw the line also there, where I just don't feel like talking with white nationalists, in part for a weighted function of like the shitstorm it would cause, but also just that I'm genuinely not interested in. It's a bit of a cop-out because I'm kind of interested in like provocative debate. So like part of me is kind of like perversely interested in talking about that kind of stuff. But I don't find it like a productively promising pathway. So that's why.
Well, when you look at like who's done the most socially disruptive and interesting artistic activism in the mode of Justin Murphy over the last 5 years, a good number of them has been on the right. For like the OK hand sign, like 4chan doing the OK hand sign, and I think It's Okay to Be White has been like a hugely successful troll. And then there was the one where who was that guy, that left-wing cringe lord who like was trying to do such socially disruptive art projects, and 4chan kept on fucking with them. This actor,
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, the Shia LaBeouf. Like he tried to be Diogenes, and like 4chan like out Diogenes him.
Right.
They like captured his flag. Like they literally captured his flag, but they captured his king, right? Like they took his art project and turned it into their art project, to the extent that Radiolab was so fascinated by it that they did an episode on it. And then they had to take the episode down when everybody complained that like, but there was just such an interesting story. And there's been examples on the left too. I mean, you're a mild example. I think Greta Thunberg is an interesting activist, just from like how she did activism. Sorry to bring up the G word, but so it's interesting that like, you want to sit down. I mean, there is all these people are working anonymously on the right, so there isn't like some representation of 4chan that you could sit down with. But if you could sit down with a representation of 4chan, like they would be very related to, I think, your intellectual interests of like artistic disruptive truth telling or activism.
Right. Any of the rest of you have GG Pal, you got anything? Thomas, you got anything? Or Jason, nope. Do you have any? You started the question, so I'm sure you have a take.
Well, I think that the way to so I think you've kind of admitted that what's keeping you from speaking to certain people, and I think that there might be other people other than that label. There's like probably pro-pedophile people that you probably don't want to be talking to. Whatever. Sure. I don't even know. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah. I don't know. But let's just say there's other people. what we're saying is that the concern is if you didn't have this financial constraint to have to provide for your family and wife or whatever, if you had full intellectual freedom, then you wouldn't be against speaking to some people. I guess that's become obvious. I think the other thing is that the way to do this,
I would clarify that. This is what I was saying before about how like these tensions, these trade-offs are foundational. They're not. So it's not just about financial constraint. It's about, to build anything that works, you have to draw lines. You have to draw limits and boundaries, or the thing won't function. So even if I was rich, I would still draw these lines the same way, because it's a much more abstract and foundational challenge of like creating a public project that has a point, that functions in a particular position with certain effects, right? Like what I'm really talking about is not so much financial, although for me personally, financials are part of it. It's more like, it's also the fact that if I started talking with white nationalists, my whole project would be like, like you are changed by the nature of your thing is changed by where you draw your lines, right? So if I open it up, so now I'm talking with pedophiles and proper white nationalists and Nazis, then it's all like, what Justin is doing, the nature of what Justin is doing actually concretely changes. And if you draw those boundaries too wide, at a certain point, you're not actually doing anything that functions in a particular way. Currently, by drawing the boundaries the way I'm drawing them, I function in a more concrete and specific and forceful way, which is I am still generally a left-wing former academic who is prying open the Overton window of his domain in a particular way that makes sense and is still legible. But I'm not just like this completely open vessel that has no particular function or significance or delimited meaning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess, yes. What you're saying is that there's, even if you did have a lot of money, there'd still be concerns about the nature of your project and how it would be perceived. I guess the angle I was getting at is if the project, and if maybe I relate to this more, is that if the project in itself is only you and your pursuit of knowledge and your stimulus, let's say, in talking to interesting people, then I wouldn't like. I guess then the project is different. Then it doesn't really have a goal other than some kind of self-edifying thing that you just, okay, well, I'm willing to talk to anybody, so why not anybody, whatever. But I guess the other thing I was going to get at, and you spoke about this with your in your podcast with the Zero HP Lovecraft, is that he kind of pointed out that, and Chamomile says it too, that basically anonymity is probably the only safer way to kind of get away with speaking to people that you're not supposed to, I suppose. Now, that's not the path you're taking, obviously, but I'm just saying that's probably the way to do it today if you had to. I wouldn't even think it's profitable, but it would be a way to do it. That's probably
right. I think if what you want is personal latitude to speak with anyone at any extreme, kind of for pleasure and for fun and for personal edification or whatever, and you just want that freedom and liberty, then yes, anonymity probably is the most sensible and optimal mode. But again, this goes back to what I was saying, like with an anonymous account, you can theoretically speak with anyone and not get any shit for it. But are you building something? That's a trickier question. Are you building something that stands up and that has a kind of negentropic sort of consistency to it that is functioning in the world at large in a way that's forceful and with impacts and effects? I would argue not. I would argue that's the major cost or drawback of the anonymity method, which is like you get the privilege of having maximally wide boundaries, but for that same reason, you're not really a force in the social fabric. And there
have been people who have had huge impacts as anonymous usernames. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, but I agree that in general it's a trade-off. But the trade-off is this: is that if you're anonymous, then you can go further than if you weren't. Therefore, you might attract more attention potentially than if you weren't, because you're going further. Then there's other pressures, and obviously there's a lot of pressure to try to find out who you are if you go too far. So anyway,
it's a good point.
I do think it changes the whole nature of a project to be anonymous. I briefly had some anonymous projects, and my entire approach to discourse was very different, and I think not necessarily in a good way. Like the pieces that I'm most proud of are the ones that I have my real identity at least tangentially related to. It's like too easy to, for me anyways, it was too easy to just kind of be an edgelord when I was anonymous. And now like I have the sort of artistic creative constraint of like trying to say something worthwhile without getting killed. And it's actually thrilling. And, I think perhaps something greater will come out of that constraint. And I do want to give you just some props and credit, Justin, like for any criticism that's coming at you, like you've taken more risks to be in service of authenticity than anybody else on this call, and probably anybody on listening to this live stream. So you do deserve props.
Oh, well, thank you, but don't give me too much credit. It'll go to my head. I appreciate it though. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to highlight how I'm imperfect like anyone, and I have my own lines which are drawn pretty arbitrarily. And yeah, I think it's just a fact that everyone kind of has to. And if you don't look, it's a bit of a cliche, but like it's kind of this meme about how limitations kind of make the consistency of what you're doing, right? It's like people say this about poetry, right? Like music, all different disciplines, right? It's the constraints that make the art in some sense. Having to create within the constraints is it's the forcing function that makes you creative. If there are no constraints, you kind of don't have to be creative. You can just kind of like piss all over a canvas, right? It's the constraints that impose the structure that make the creative flourishes coherent and legible and forceful and impactful. It's the same thing in poetry and music, I think. Like, I think that's kind of what's going on with social and political boundaries. Like, if I talked with anyone at all and I had no kind of constraint, like for instance, like having a wife who's like a normal person in like functional society, is a constraint on like what I can say and do on the internet. It's a constraint. I don't have many constraints, and I'm privileged to not have many external constraints, but that is a constraint. And it means I do have to wrestle with like political and social factors still to some degree, if only for that reason. But because I have to wrestle with those political constraints, it's that is what's forcing me to be. That's why I'm an open-minded kind of creative radical leftist. And I'm not just like another right-wing edgelord. Like, this is what I'm getting at. Like, I could talk with Richard Spencer on my live stream and a bunch of other people like Richard Spencer, but then I would transform into just another right-wing edgelord. And there's nothing, that's fine. There can be right-wing edgelords, and they have their own function and they're doing their own path. But only a kind of left-wing academic can have certain effects on certain people in the social fabric, in the subspace around that particular unique sociological positioning. To have those effects on those people that I'm having the effects on, I need to be the person I am. I need to have those constraints. I need to care about what my wife thinks and how she experiences things and judge things. If I didn't have that constraint of my wife's like normal social concerns, if I didn't have that constraint, yes, I could talk to Richard Spencer, but then I would not be having the unique effects that I am having. And only I can have the unique effects that I am having. And so these constraints, they're not just arbitrary impositions that constrain kind of radical philosophical consistency. In a part, they make you who you are, and they actually are the possibility of creating the unique value in the unique niche of sociological space that you find yourself in. And so I say embrace a certain small amount of constraint in order to let your explosive, transgressive, Diogenes like philosophical intensity have some kind of localizable effect. That's my philosophy, I think, there.
Well said.
Antoine, Thomas, you guys got anything on this?
No, not really. Sorry.
Okay. It's cool. This was fun, guys. Thanks for coming on air with me. This was cool.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed this. And it seems like enough people are into it that I might just have to make this a tradition now. We'll see. It's fun. Honestly, this was fun. I think I will think about doing this on some kind of regular basis. Oh, GG Pal is back. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry, having connection problems.
Cool.
I just wanted
Do you have
to
anything? Yeah, go.
I just wanted to say that limitation breeds creativity. That's kind of what I've experienced from. It kind of gives you like a boost, and so having these constraints actually allows you to think of creative ways to get out there. You know, kind of escape the plane of flight, or the, you know. And so that's a pretty good thing that sometimes I can be able to overmatch some situations by being, you know, this kind of person that can overcome things.
Right on. Yeah, I totally agree. Cool. Well, guys, I think this is a natural place to wrap it up. Unless anyone had any parting words, anything you want to get out there, or also if anyone wants to plug their own shit, that's fine too. I don't care. Use my platform for your own purposes, please do. Or any parting words, observations, comments, anything you're working on, you want to tell us about before we wrap it up.
Oh, I'm working on a side project right now. So I kind of noticed that a lot of interesting conversations start on Twitter, but it ends up not being the best place to continue them. Mostly just because of the character limit and anyone being able to chime in. So I'm working on a platform right now where you can kind of just copy and paste a link to a Twitter thread that involves a few people. And basically what will happen is at the top of the page, it embeds the tweets. And then under that, the people who were in that conversation can continue conversing without a character limit. So I'm just trying to make it as a place for people to actually be able to continue Twitter conversations without the character limit and be able to go into more depth. So yeah, if it's going to be called sideroom.app, and it should be up within a week or so. So there's that, and also you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Lisankie. TOMLISANKIE. So yeah, awesome. Thanks for doing this, Justin.
Yeah, thanks for joining on a random whim, Thomas. I appreciate it. Good to meet you face to face.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks. That your projects sound cool. I'll check them out for sure. Awesome.
Sideroom sounds based.
Sounds based. Awesome. I'm gonna cut you out, Thomas, to bring in a new guy, Shaman. His name is Shaman. This will be cool. Hey, Shaman, you're on air. How you doing, man? Oh, wait. For some reason, your picture is not visible. Let's see. Hang on. Shaman, if you're there, well, speak up. But they dropped out. Whatever. Anyone else any party?
I have a question for you, Justin. How do you find the forum, the Indie Thinkers Forum? How do you like the progress and the activity and all that?
Yeah, so far I'm pleased with it. Yeah, I'm kind of spinning my wheels right now, thinking about. I have a bunch of ideas and kind of pilot projects coming up to stimulate the forum, and I have some ideas for how to kind of generate more value on the forum to get kind of higher value discussions going. But I think so far organically, without pretty much I haven't done any particularly clever kind of community management prodding yet, and so far for just totally organic community vibes, I'm pretty pleased with it. But your opinion matters more. What do you think, Jason?
Oh yeah, I like it. I like the caliber of person that's in there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to more conversations, seeing how it's going.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to see what it's like when we get to a kind of greater critical mass. Right now, with only 30 people, it's not that many people. So I'll kind of judge a little bit more harshly on myself and the system I've been able to build. If we can get to about 50 people, then I think I'll start investing much more in optimizing kind of community dynamics, because I think until then, my effort is more allocated towards growing it and getting that critical mass of people in. Because I think without with a small user base, there's not that much to optimize. So I'm trying to focus on increasing users at the moment, but I have some tricks up my sleeve. I think, honestly, the stuff we've been doing so far is kind of corny. It's just simple stuff like putting your goals for the week on Monday mornings, and then writing a follow up on whether you accomplish your goals on Friday and Saturday or whatever. Simple. Personally, I'm getting a lot of value out of that. I hope other people are too. It's a very simple thing, but I think that type of thing is hopefully giving a kind of concrete burst of kind of community energy and value and kind of like focus hopefully in people's intellectual projects. I'm hoping. So it's still brand new, so I'm trying to just like probably after a month or so I will do a kind of systematic feedback gathering process to get like a rigorous signal from like if people are happy or not. But until then, I'm personally kind of pleased with it. Jacob, you haven't been particularly active. Is that for personal reasons, or do you have any feedback?
Yeah, just kind of haven't gotten in the habit of checking it really yet. And work, unfortunately, having a full-time job kind of does impact one's indie thinking life. Haven't had haven't had my priorities in the right order. Been prioritizing that paycheck instead of my blog posts. But
right,
yeah, I hope to. I'll check it out today. Maybe I can start engaging. Is there like a shit posting channel? That's usually a good way to like keep engaged when like I'm thinking about a forum. I just think like I'm gonna have to like write like smart things and like versus a Discord where I can just kind of like read memes.
Right. I guess I know what you mean. I guess we want it to be more like smart stuff rather than shit posting, but your point is well taken that like there's a kind of gravity that kind of makes one feel like, oh, I better not log into the forum because forum is like high effort, it's like high effort, and that so yeah, there might be a way that I can hack that can make it kind of more relaxing and easy going.
Well, if there was just like a little part of it that was like fun popcorn, it would like train me to keep coming back, and I would eat the fun popcorn and then I would check out the dense content like while I was there. But right now I've sort of just kind of bounced off because I'm like I don't have the time and effort to engage properly with these people.
Okay, that's great feedback. I'll think about that. I'm sure we can come up with some sort of regularly recurring, kind of more lighthearted but still valuable type of thing. So that's cool. I mean, in some sense, Jacob, if you remember a few months ago, you and I, for like I think about 2 weeks, we kind of experimented with that kind of small group, like more focused productivity thing where we would like we did a conversation live video and then we made plans and checked up on each other. That was actually, I really enjoyed that. And that was actually one of the seeds for my decision to build Indie Thinkers, because I feel like when we did that, it was really good and it worked. It was just way too much kind of time and energy for me to focus on without like having some sort of like financial support for it, like to remain invested in it. So that was a seed. Like I decided if I can make it financially sustainable, that I would invest in doing that for all of us on like a weekly basis. So that's like what I'm trying to do, by the way. I don't know if I ever told you that, but yeah.
Oh, cool.
So definitely let me know more if you have any other input on how I can make it work better for people. I'm very open to that right now for sure. Cool. What about the rest of you? Antoine, Gigi-Pal?
I had there was one question I found in the chat that I wanted to see your response on. It was about truth physically hurting people, or certain statements having physical effects. And someone wanted to know what your thoughts were on that. Which I can find at the end.
Yeah, I actually do think there is a limited sense in which someone's got like kids in the background. Just mute your mic if you can. I do think there's a limited sense in which it's reasonable to argue that words can be used as a kind of violence. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, right? It's not like a very fancy or sophisticated argument, right? It's like you can be extremely mean to people, for instance. Like in some sense, if you use words that are intelligently and cleverly crafted to really wound someone and really kind of destroy them emotionally and psychologically, you can do that with words, right? Like that's sure. In some sense, it's very reasonable to call that a kind of violence, right? I think that makes sense, and there's a reasonable defense of that. So yeah, I do think that that's kind of legit. I also think you can make an equally compelling case that violence should just be preserved for physical aggression or physical assault of some kind. But these are essentially pragmatic arguments about what words should mean, right? I mean, definitions are arbitrary, right? Like if anyone who's taken like basic rhetoric class, or like if you did the debate club in high school or whatever, like you would know it's simple fact that pretty much definitions are arbitrary, and there's something called like a right to define. So anyone who wants to speak or present an argument has the right to define words however they want. because you actually can't get a conversation or an argument off the ground unless you're given the right to define words. It's a kind of foundational fact of how language functions and how rhetoric and logic function. So there's a right to define. There's a sensible way in which you can talk about words as violence, and you can define a certain type of word as violence, and I think that makes sense and it's legitimate and can be useful. And there's also a way in which you can define words. You can define violence as strictly physical, and there's a utility to doing that, and that's sensible. So I tend to think that these types of debates are kind of useless because people have the right to define words how they want, and there are different ways of defining words that can make sense. So
I think that the way words are violence is used, and I completely agree with what you just said, Justin, but I think the way it's used today when people say this is words can be violence and they could be interpreted as harmful to some people. Obviously, that's always the case. But what you can legitimately say is, oh, this is aggressive and this is violent. For that to have power, you need to have a structure behind you that supports it. If you tell me that you had a great day today and that you're having a great day, and I say, oh, those words are violence, that's not something that could be defended on a large basis in our society, because that doesn't sound reasonable, first of all, but also there's no like vested interests in the society to back me up on that. But if you say, oh, your opinions on the Catholic Church are violent to me, well, there's maybe at that point some people who will defend you and say, yes, that is violence, what you just said. So
later, Jacob. Thanks for hanging out, man. Nice seeing you.
The way it's used as a way of a political oppression and basically power games.
Yes, I think there's a lot of that for sure. GG pal, you got anything you want to share? You want to tell us about your blogs or anything? Any kind of web stuff you want to plug or share with us?
Yeah, I have a blog, rhizometheory.com.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you guys talked about that, because I'm actually exploring the kind of sociological constructs of insults, and so I take it into a series of moves where it's the common sense kind of thing, where words typically hurt each other by simply, someone says the insult and that's hurting words, and then the other person gets insulted. Usually insults work through recognition, and so the other person has to recognize that you are actually genuinely hurting them. The other person has to recognize that you're insulting them. But kind of how this works is that there's a structure behind it, in that people take refuge in the social structure, where you can actually insult people with not even saying much. But yeah, it's very interesting to explore this kind of thing that I'm trying to get to. I call it the modus operandi, because it is all transactions, all insults happen through unfairness, if that makes sense. Deep down, there's always a unequal vitalism, if that makes sense to you guys.
That's interesting, man. Yeah, I would definitely read more about that. Sounds cool. So did you say rhizometheory.com, is it?
Yes, it is.
Awesome, dude. And what was your first name, by the way?
Giovanni. That's my first name.
Giovanni. Oh, right on. Cool. I think I remember seeing your name. Cool. Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on air and hanging out with us, and thanks for sharing your stuff. People can check that out if they want to. Sounds good. I would read that. I think I probably already added you to my RSS feeds. Anyone who tells me about their blog, I add it to my RSS feed. So I try my best to monitor everything and read everything I can. So awesome.
Justin,
cool, man. Jason, Antoine, any other parting words or final kind of last things you want to?
You're still networking with dissident academics, all that stuff?
What's that?
Are you still networking with dissident academics? You were talking about, well, I mean, that's what indie thinkers are, but how's that working out?
Yeah, I'm talking with some for sure. It's working out okay. Nothing particularly off the top of my mind on that front. We got a last minute newcomer. I'll bring him in for just a second. Shaman, are you there? Someone outside in an alley. I'm afraid we're about to be trolled. Oh, Shaman.
No.
How you doing?
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Good. I saw
Yeah,
an
sounds
empty.
like
Oh, good.
part of it was like the last part of the discussions sort of been about it seems like taboos. You know, you won't have a white nationalist, for instance, but I think that's a taboo, like a boundary line, which is something that you don't necessarily want to cross. So you're leaving out people who have experience in a quote unquote what's called, you know, in mainstream media today, the white nationalist movement. In the lead up to Trump becoming elected, there was a lot of things going on with social media, which was kind of an opening of a lot of channels of expression that hadn't been open since, they pretty much say, the bombings of the early 90s in Waco and all of that. So I kind of have a perspective on the white nationalist lead up because I was interested in the social phenomenon like you would have been if you were doing your podcast during that time. Wow, what's going on? There's more white nationalists online. There's more growing, you know, websites and everything covering these aspects. I think it's a taboo, which is part and parcel of our society in America today. And the perspectives are, well, you know, there's a book by Mitchell Heisman, The Suicide Note. A lot of people have read it who are on the left. There's a 2,000-page tome about Norman versus Anglo perspectives on what you know, what's going on in our society. It's a sociobiological evolutionary take on the way national and imperial neoliberal capitalism came about. So most people focus on the AI aspects that he talks about, but that's, I think, something that's really open to people who aren't from maybe the ancestral or kind of descendant type of race that he's discussing. For instance, he points out that the English and the Anglosphere itself, the whole Anglosphere, you know, Nick Land talks about, is a socio-biological cultural evolution that came about because of England's kings being under the yoke of William the Conqueror's conquering ethos, and that having happened in 1066, the English actually spent 500 years under these French invaders, French Viking, that would be the Norman, Duchy of Normandy family, and that they were the kings of England for, let's say, 500 years. And that was such an influence on their Anglo-Saxonhood that they always resented the Norman yoke. And when I was searching through like American and European history, I found this to be a pretty good thesis of you know, trying to describe what's going on today in the world, in that there are no Normans. It's pretty much can be found in historical books that are out of print that the American early settlers in this land came from, you know, a majority were England, but the history books will tell you that they were primarily English people. But some books will say that they were probably a third Dane, a third English, and a third Norman. So where did the other Danes and Normans go? So the question of what is white is really kind of, I think, a question of what is Anglo.
Huh.
The rest the rest of the world, I mean, every country in the world speaks English now. So they're Anglophile, loving English. There are no other alternatives. So it's put under the umbrella of whiteness. I've done my genealogical roots and history and found that I'm pretty much from the typically what a lot of American people are, which we call white today, unless you had another perspective to say what it is that your ancestry comes from.
Wait, so you're saying that a lot of Americans are actually Norman, and so they're not. So you're saying that what white really means is Anglo, and if you're Norman, then you're not really white.
Pretty much, So the taboo that's available in history is, where are the Goths, and where are the Normans, and where are these races that came outside of the Roman roads? There were like some white tribes. They called it the Dan tribe and all of that. And in the 1800s, they mixed it up with a lot of kind of bogus genealogy. But this has been swept under the rug, and I think it's perhaps a reason why American society is very Gothic in nature. Gothic meaning just, there are dark crevices swept under the corner that can never come out to be spoken about in public, so they're taboo.
Well, Shaman, that is a intriguing knowledge bomb to come on and drop at the end of our live stream. Thank you for sharing that. I'm afraid I don't have much to say in response, because it's interesting. I'll just have to digest that for a bit. I don't have any immediate response, but we were just about to wrap it up right before you came on. So just where are you calling in from?
San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley area.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on randomly. I hate to be so brief, but yeah.
No problem.
What was your name, or is that not? Or do you want to tell us that? Or do you want to tell us? Yeah. Do you want to tell us anything more about like who you are, what you're working on, or?
Yeah, something along these lines that just kind of unearths the Gothic elements of history that are taboo in society today, in a way that people can understand and not necessarily be turned off by, because they don't have their genealogical history done and they don't really know where they're from. I think philosophically, your experience of who you are and who you're, I don't know whether it's genetics or ancestral background, but like exactly who are you? Most of us, I think, trying to philosophize on the left side are taking this Anglo slate of the blank slate, Locke's blank slate, and starting from there and saying, well, so I find everyone's approach to figuring out what is going on in the world today philosophically with different frameworks is basically an Anglo framework. I found that for myself to be very constricting, and then that's so I'm doing a hardware company instead of a book or a philosophy intellectual project. It's just a hardware company that speaks to these truths symbolically and metaphorically. Interesting.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing all that. It's very intriguing and interesting. So yeah, thanks. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin.
I'll see you around the interwebs.
Sounds good.
All right. Antoine, anything you got for us? Close this out.
Just wanted to pump my content, I guess.
Yeah. What do you got?
So I wrote a really short book called After Genius on creativity and its consequences, mostly last year, and you can download it for free if you go to bit.ly/aftergenius. And my Twitter is just my name. That's my name on all social media things. You can even add me on Snapchat if you'd like to do that.
Nice.
I don't, not that I use it often, but it's there. But yeah, so if you're interested in, I guess, like ruthless truths, I tried to compile 50 pages of the most psychologically painful but honest things I could produce. So that'd be my plug of. I appreciate you even letting anyone do that, but that's.
Yeah, why not? It's fun. I mean, it's kind of cool because it's like this is kind of cool because it just kind of occurred to me just now that anyone in the world could come on here, and I'm not vetting them, right? So like Adolf Hitler could have joined the live stream today, and I would have not been able to know it or stop it, right? So like it is what I'm doing here with like just letting anyone in, it's pretty wild. Like it's pretty unpredictable, but it's cool. I like it. And if someone comes in and they're like, I don't know, ranting some like really evil, like murderous shit. It's not my fault. I didn't know they were going to do that. It's just I don't know. It's just a room. This is just a room on the internet with an open door, right? Is it my fault? Like, I'm not, I don't know. Shaman is back. Shaman, did you come back to squeeze something else in before we wrap it up?
Oh, no, not necessarily. Thanks.
Okay, cool. No worries. Yeah, so just to finish that thought, I was just saying that, this has been a fun experiment. I've never done this before where I opened it up publicly and anyone could join the live stream. And this was fun. I think we had like something like 8 people or more come through, and very interesting, eclectic range of people and opinions and topics. So I think I'm going to do this again. So stay tuned.
You should.
Cool. All right, take it easy, folks. I'm gonna close this baby down. See you around the interwebs. Thanks everyone for hanging out. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Leave me a message if you want to in the replies. I'll read them all. Thanks for hanging out, folks. Take it easy.